Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Chari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hari Krishna Hari Krishna 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 Hari 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 Rama Hari Rama Ramo Ramo Hari 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 Krishna Hari Krishna 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 Hari 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 Ramo Hari Ramo 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 Hari 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 Krishna Hari Krishna 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 Hari 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 Ramo Hari Ramo 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 Hari 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 Krishna Hari Krishna 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 Hari 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 Ramo Hari Ramo 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 Hari Hari Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shri Radhe Jaya Goranitai Goranitai Jaya Goranitai Jaya Goranitai Jaya Goranitai Goranitai Jaya Goranitai Jaya Goranitai Jaya Guru Deva 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 Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Haribo Kora Haribo Haribo Kora Haribo Nitai Kora Haribo Kora Haribo Haribo Kora Haribo Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, everybody. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, text, Chapter 11, text 25. Let me just pull that up. 2-7, Chapter 11, 7-11. 25. Strinam cha patidevanam takchushrush santu kulvata tadbansva bantus anuvritischa nityam tad vritadaranam, strininam cha patidevanam, tak chushrush sanukutlata, tad bandus anuvritischa, nityam tad vritadaranam, strininam cha patidevanam, tad chashrush sanukulata, tad bandu anuvritischa, nityam tad vritadaranam. If anyone online would like to chant.
I would like to chant. Shrinam Chapati Devanam Chach Chushrushyanukulata Tadvandhush Ranu Vritisha Nityam Tad Vratadaranam.
Shrinam Chapati Deva Takchush Ankulata Tadmanush Anu Ritischa Nityam Tadaran.
Would anybody else like to chant?
Shrinam Chapavana Takshash Anu Tadvan Anuvrita Jamta Taranam.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's do the word for word translation. Strinam of women, Cha also, Pati Devanam, who have accepted their husbands as worshipable, Tat Shushrusa, readiness to render service to her husband, Anukulata, being favorably disposed towards her husband, Tat Bandusu, unto the husbands and relatives, unto the friends and relatives of the husband, Anuvriti, being similarly disposed to treat them well for the satisfaction of the husband, Cha and Nityam regularly, Tat Vrata Dharanam, accepting the vows of the husband or acting exactly as the husband acts. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. To render service to the husband, to be always favorably disposed towards the husband, to be equally well disposed towards the husband's relatives and friends, and to follow the vows of the husband. These are the four principles to be followed by women described as chaste. Purport. It is very important for peaceful householder life that a woman follow the vow of her husband. Any disagreement with the husband's vow will disrupt family life. In this regard, Chanaka Pandit gives a very valuable instruction. Dampatyo kalo nasti tatra shri swayam agata. When there are no fights between husband and wife, the goddess of fortune automatically comes to the home. A woman's education should be conducted along the lines indicated in this verse. The basic principle for a chaste woman is to be always favorably disposed towards her husband. In Bhagavad Gita 140, it is said, Shristu dustu varnesya yatata varna sankara. If the women are polluted, there will be varna sankara, pollution. In modern terms, the varna sankara are the hippies who do not follow any regulative injunctions. Another explanation is that when the population is varna sankara, no one can know who is on what platform. The varnashram system scientifically divides society into 4 varnas and 4 ashrams. But in Varna Shankara society, there are no such distinctions, and no one can know who is who. In such a society, no one can distinguish between a Brahmana, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, and a Sudra. For peace and happiness in the material world, the Varnashram institution must be introduced. The symptoms of one's activities must be defined, and one must be educated accordingly. Then spiritual advancement will automatically be possible. Ammeganantamarandasya Janaja Jakshaya Jaksho Ummilitanyana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mahapisto Sampitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Patantitam Patantikam Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shmata Bhakti Tirtha Swami Tamamini Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Arastakne Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Namine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shmata Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tamamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nivishesha Shundavadi Pashata Deshatarine. Translation again. To render service to the husband, to be always favorably disposed towards the husband, to be equally well disposed toward the husband's relatives and friends, and to follow the vows of the husband. These are the four principles to be followed by women described as chaste. I always feel when I get one of these verses that goes contrary to my personal nature, that it's just Krishna having some fun. So, okay. In a lecture given by Srila Prabhupada in LA in 72, September 7th, September 22nd, 1972, he calls the wife Dharma Patni. Dharma Patni is a very significant title because it establishes the woman in the household, in the grahasta household, as the holder of um of the holder of religion, in the um not just the holder of religion, but the person that actually establishes the culture, establishes the culture for the family, for the society, and thus for the nation. So it's really important that um, this this position or this understanding of what women do the in the family is um, not just sanctified and noticed and realized, but really understood and appreciated to be of utmost importance. When I said that, sometimes these particular verses where it feels to me that women are being um, denigrated, put into a particular situation, especially if you listen to the lecture, that this particular title is coming from the LA class. It was very hard for me to listen, and I'm realizing as I spend time in Krishna consciousness that there are a lot of, not a lot, but there are certain things that I've heard over the years that Srila Prabhupada said that um, I don't, I don't, I don't take them. I don't understand them. Not that I don't understand them, I don't accept them. And so in that non-acceptance, I'm not discarding them. I'm just putting them on the back burner. And I've realized over the years that certain things that I didn't accept or didn't really understand have actually um, I've had realizations. I had a realization 2 or 3 days ago about something that I heard years ago. I can't even remember what it is right now. It will come to me. I've been remembering and forgetting it for a while. Um, but it was like, oh my goodness, Srila Prabhupada said that, and now I'm realizing what he actually said. So again, this is something that I put on back burner, this position or this understanding of where women, of how women are, considered um, um, like less intelligent in the modes of passion and ignorance, that kind of thing. So I know people are going to say, well, Srila Prabhupada is not talking about devotee women. He's talking about non-devotee women, but still, at one point I was a non-devotee woman. So, um, okay, so let's get back to the holder of the culture and spirituality in the family, that's Dharma Patna. So in this particular verse, um, Srila Prabhupada talks about there are the five areas that I wanted to expand on. The first is that these four vows or these four areas that women are to engage in, to render service to the husband, be always favorable disposed towards the husband, to be equally well disposed towards the husband's relatives and friends, and to follow the vows of the husbands. These are the four principles to be followed by women described as chaste. So I wanted to first go back into the scriptures and find examples of these women. And as I and I'm sure you've all heard of these women before, but as show them as examples of these four particular areas to kind of reflect um, on on who they were and to try to imagine um, a little bit more about them as individual persons rather than just names in a book. So the first one is to render service. So the first example that came to mind when I thought of, okay, a wife rendering service to her husband, the first name that came into my head was Devahuti, who serves Pradama Muni very nicely, and who is exalted by balancing household life with deep spiritual devotion. And anyone that wants to go back and read about all of the things that she used to do for her husband, pairing the sacrificial arenas and just making sure that everything that her husband was engaged in, she was helping to prepare all of that. So to me, that was the first example of a woman, the example of rendering service. That's the first name that came to mind. And then the second area, being favorably disposed towards the husband. The person that came to mind when I thought about that was Rukmini, one of who held the highest status amongst Krishna's wives in Dwarka, and how she was always engaged um, in saying, making sure that Krishna's life was always very, very pleasant, always had very pleasant words for him, was always engaged in making sure um, that all her activities were properly, culturally properly executed. And so, again, as I was thinking through this, I was just seeing what examples came to mind, and she came to mind for being favorably disposed towards the husband. And then being equally disposed towards the husband's relatives and friends. Um, the first example that came to my mind was Draupadi, how Draupadi, as the wife of the Pandavas, also was so much engaged with all of the different intrigues that were going on with her husband's family, even coming from a kingdom of her own, being a royal princess in her own right, still engaged in all of the different activities that were going on um, in her life as a wife of the Pandavas and extended the Kauravas and all of those different family interactions and being with Kunti and the Pandavas in exile, uh, and all of the intrigues that were going on. So to me, she was an example of being equally disposed towards the husband, relatives, and friends. And then this last part, following the vows of the husband, the um, the wife that came to my mind, the woman that came to my mind was Sita, representing the ultimate embodiment of Dharma and righteousness and unwavering devotion, taking the active choice to follow her husband into the forest for 14 years. That's a long time. 14 years is a long time. And and refusing to take the life of comfort that he actually suggested for her. So that was So again, for me, these examples, and I'm sure there must be others. And as I'm saying these names, if you're thinking of others, you could please put them in the chat, or share them when we have questions and answers. If there are other women that you feel also embody these characteristics that Srila Prabhupada is talking about. Um, the other 2 points that came up for me in reading through this text was when Srila Prabhupada talks about this Varna Shankara society, and he quotes from the Bhagavad Gita, where it talks about, well, Arjuna is lamenting about um, engaging in the battle of Kurukshetra, because he's saying that if this battle goes on, the men will die. If the men die, women will not have anyone to protect them. Unprotected women become exploited, and unwanted population progeny are produced. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, if women are polluted, there will be Varna Shankara population. In modern terms, the Varna Shankara are the hippies who do not follow any regulative injunctions. And I'm sure in the 60s, that was very clear that, that there was a generation that did not want to follow any regulative injunctions. I'm sure 60 years later, that there are more than just the young population that are not following any regulative injunctions, and it would be hard to find um, it would be hard to find people that are following regulative injunctions, actually, to be honest. I know Gen Z, Gen X is coming into mind, but um, that's a whole nother conversation. Um, the point that in point that really kind of stood out to me about this is something that I hadn't actually thought about, but is clearly obvious, that he says that in the Varna Shankara, no one can know who is on what platform. The Varnashram system scientifically divides society into 4 Varnas and 4 Ashrams, but in Varna Shankara society, there's no such distinctions, and no one can know who is who. In such a society, no one can distinguish between a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and a Sudra. And he goes on to say, for peace and happiness in the world, there has to be those distinctions. And I was actually thinking about this. That makes so much sense, that um, that when we don't know who we are, then we don't know what to do. Um, and later on in the Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 12, chapter 214, it emphasizes how the collapse of the Varnashram system in this Kali Yuga um, creates so many problems. We have police that are abusive. We have leaders that are thieves and greedy. We have judges that lie. We have workers that cheat. And we've come to take actually all of these things as normal, but they're actually not normal. It's really so interesting how things that we consider to be the norm in Kali Yuga are actually um, indications of how far away we are from what really is normal. Can you imagine um, um, being amongst people that that don't lie or don't cheat, or that do what they say they're going to do, or um, or uphold the ethics and are morally upright and hold the ethics of their job and their position. When you hear about stuff like that, it seems like, oh, that's exceptional. Oh, wow, that person is really amazing that they did that. Oh yeah, that person stands out. But that's actually supposed to be the norm. And this really brought it to my back to really I was give me gave me something to really reflect on, that a lot of the stuff that we are talking about, um, that we, like I said, take for granted or take for as normal, is actually not normal. This is the antithesis of what life is actually supposed to be like, when things are running properly, when um, when um, when families are strong, when societies are strong, when nations are strong in their moral and ethical foundation. So it takes us back to the role of women in the marriage, um, and all of these really nice um, examples of what constitute a chaste woman. But I wanted to also try to bring these this understanding of women, Vedic women in modern life, and talk about what marriages, to a certain extent, seem to reflect now, and how we could find move towards what an ideal situation would be. So in modern marriage, the flaws tend to be that they're based on sense gratification, that most, I hate generalizing, but you know, it seems to me that most marriages are m- based on mutual sexual pleasure rather than mutual duty. So that's one of the first flaws of modern marriages. Another one is that divorce is, it seems to be so easy that um, any kind of minor disruption can end up in, a separation. Now, I'm not saying that there are not situations in which people should be separated, that they should, that marriage should be dissolved, but it shouldn't really be the first. It shouldn't be the first go-to. That there should be a real, at the beginning of the marriage, there should be a real determination that we're going to make this happen. We're going to make this work. And in the lecture that Srila Prabhupada was that I was listening to in LA, he was talking about how he considers divorce to be a modern, an artificial modern day occurrence. It's something that was invented in this modern age, that divorce actually doesn't even exist in Vedic understandings. The other third thing is a lack of responsibility to really, and when I say lack of responsibility, what I'm thinking of, what came to my mind was how Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj would would really emphasize that it's important for all of us to be working on our own stuff, that we need to, and not even just in a marriage, in a community, in any kind of relationship, a working relationship, in a business relationship, in a community relationship, in a marriage relationship. We all need to be working on our stuff. We have so much baggage that we've brought in from lifetime after lifetime, from conditioning, from traumas, from this, from that. And if we just continue to carry the stuff around with us, how much of our um, ability to be able to move forward is hindered by the baggage that we're carrying. But if we, as we're engaging in Krishna consciousness, we have to also be engaging in really analyzing and looking at what is it that uh, what is it that we're bringing into this arena, bringing into this circle, that does not have to be there, that we can be working on ourselves. And then when we come into contact with other devotees or even other people, we have at least done some work on our own selves, and then we can like continue working in that relationship as well. But if we're not doing anything to deal with our own stuff, how do you think, how are we going to be able to work with others, you know, in any form of relationship? So I think that is really, really important. um and then, of course, a lack of responsibility. in women being left unprotected and uncared for, and also children being left unprotected and uncared for too. So those are the flaws in modern marriages, or some of them. I'm sure there are more. But the Vedic alternative in Krishna consciousness, one, marriage has a purpose. And so when you're entering into a relationship, you're entering into a relationship not just because you're attracted to each other, but you're entering into the relationship because there's a purpose for you coming together to work with another human being. Household life is meant to control the senses and to help both husband and wife advance in spiritual life. So you're coming together because you both have a higher, a mission that's higher than both of you, and together you're synergistically working towards the fulfillment of that highest pleasure, which is devotional service. So you're helping each other achieve a goal that you would get to faster with the help of somebody else than just, by yourself. Two, cooperation. Proper marriage is teamwork, where the husband protects and provides, and the wife organizes and stabilizes, and both dedicate their energy to serving Krishna. So both husband and wife have roles in the marriage, and both roles are important. It's not that, and this is something sometimes I feel when you're reading um, this scriptural text, it feels as though, yeah, the husband has all these important roles, and the wife, she's just following the husband. The wife also has very important roles too. And like I said in the very beginning, that the cultural theme, the cultural sense of a community, of a country, is actually comes through women. The women are the cultural holders of the holders of religion in the family. And three, raising devotees. So most marriages are there to raise children, and raising children in Krishna consciousness is one of the most important jobs, one of the most important services that a couple can do in the marriage, to bring souls into the world that um, are going to have the ability to be able to get out of the cycle of birth and death. So you're enabling, you're offering an avenue, an opportunity for souls to relieve the suffering that they're going through in this material world, and that is a glorious service. So how do we reach this state of of um, of perfection? How do we situate ourselves in this perfection? Um, One of the last things that Prabhupada was saying in the lecture was, by absorbing ourselves in Krishna consciousness, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Shmaranam, Padasevanam. This complete engagement in Krishna consciousness gives us the ability to not just to purify our senses and our intentions, but also situates us in a way to accept the mercy of Krishna, to feel the mercy and the grace of Krishna that can help us fulfill our vows. I was having a discussion these past few weeks. I've been having discussions on the Bhagavad Gita, and one of the things that came up was the necessity of actually speaking vows out loud. And one of the benefits of speaking vows out loud, when we take a wedding vow or a whatever vow, or whatever vows we take, initiation vows, all of these vows are spoken out loud, because in that speaking we are drawing the attention of the devas, we're drawing the attention of Krishna, we're drawing the attention of Srimati Radharani to help us fulfill those vows, to help us in this path that we are moving into, that we are stepping forward into. And um, in that speaking, we get the help that we need to be able to do the things that we want to do. whether it's to have a solid Krishna conscious marriage founded on, all of these foundations that Srila Prabhupada is putting out here, that the scriptures are putting out here, as far as understanding, our roles, understanding how we're working together, understanding what the ultimate goal is. Um, Even taking vows as a devotee, we're getting the help that we need to be able to, chant our rounds every morning, to follow the principles, to engage in Krishna consciousness in such a way that we inspire others to also engage in, on this path, and to, to consider moving forward on this path. So, um, there's a lot. There's a lot here, and again, it gives me the opportunity to really try to understand, how all of this comes together, how all of it works, how how beautiful this arrangement is, even if I can't see how all the pieces fit together. So, I am always in awe at how beautifully Krishna has, created this world, even though we're not supposed to be here. The world that we are in is still very beautiful, and functions, when it's supposed to, when it's functioning the way it's supposed to function, is a very beautiful way of being able to move through this world to get to where we are supposed to be. Just like, Krishna is explaining to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, that this battle, there's no way to get around the battle. You have to fight, but there's a way that you can fight, that you can get to the other side successfully. So we are in this battle of this material world. We can't get out, we can't get around it. We're here, but there's a way that we can get through it, that we can get to the other side successfully. Um, and we're all helping each other do that, get to the other side successfully. So I'll read the translation one more time, and then we can open for questions and comments and corrections and everything else. 7:11:25 translation: to render service to the husband, to be always favorably disposed towards the husband, to be equally well disposed towards the husband's relatives and friends, and to follow the vows of the husband. These are the 4 principles to be followed by women described as chaste. So if we have any questions or comments or sharings, there's some things going on in the chat. Let me check that. Thank you, Taraka Prabhu, for putting, this stuff in the chat. Yeah, and I think you must, have sensed that I'm not a fan of Chanaka Pandit. Um, that's all I'm going to say about that. Um, Maybe those that, I know I see people online, and there are a few people that are married. Maybe, some of the married couples can share some insights that they've had as far as being in a marriage, and, hearing these, instructions from the Bhagavatam, and how that lands for you, and um, how you have worked with these things, or even those that are going to get married or not.
Hare Krishna. There's
Horrible, terrible.
it's a terrible echo in here. Makes it difficult to speak. I want to thank you for a very nice class. This topic, I think, is sensitive for some, and I think that you handled it very well. I think it's worth saying that while great expectations are placed on women in Vedic culture, it is also true that there are tremendous expectations of men, both in marriage and in general. Men have a tremendous number of responsibilities. Sometimes I think that people get the impression that we place a great number of demands on women, and Vedic culture does indeed have great expectations for women, but it's not lopsided. It's not one-sided. Men have tremendous responsibilities. It's a huge subject matter. There's a great deal to understand, and it's not easy to assimilate all of that understanding because there are so very many instructions, both in our own Gaudiya Vaishnav literatures and also in other shastras throughout the various literatures that comprise the Vedas. There are just so many instructions. Srila Prabhupada touches on some of them. Our previous acharyas discuss them, but all of them are meant to help us. The essential principle that underlines all of the rules and regulations, all of the prohibitions for all of the members of society, the men, the women, the four varnas, the four ashramas. There are many rules and regulations. All of them are meant to foster Krishna consciousness, to effect the ultimate solution to the problems of life. It entails oftentimes a certain amount of austerity, and it often requires that we deny certain aspects of ourselves, our desires. We have to sometimes do things that we do not want to do, and we sometimes have to refrain from doing things that we do want to do. But the hope is that we will understand that it is in our best interest to do so. I have seen over the years in ISKCON that there is often a lot of misunderstanding about the role of men and women and how things are supposed to work in marital relationships. I think it's gradually improving. Devotees are gradually assimilating the instructions that Srila Prabhupada has given us and helping others to understand. Early in the movement, there was a great deal of immaturity, not very much of a solid understanding of the instructions, or the rationale behind them. And so sometimes unfortunate mistakes were made. But there, as I say, there's just so much to understand. We could discuss this topic for days and not reach the end. Women are we read again and again all over that women are supposed a wife is supposed to be submissive to her husband, and a husband is supposed to be submissive to his spiritual master. Both are supposed to be submissive to their spiritual master. The husband is supposed to be regarded as pati guru. For the wife, he's supposed to be another guru. But sometimes husbands do not behave themselves like guru. So then how can we expect a woman to be submissive to a husband who is ill-behaved? I think Srila Prabhupada's general instruction is that a woman should remain submissive in any circumstance, at least for the sake of keeping the peace. Otherwise, there can be no progress. But that in circumstances in which the husband is seriously off the rails, then it becomes her duty to separate herself from the situation. An abusive husband, for example, our process is not that a woman should be forcibly subjected to any kind of abuse. So then Srila Prabhupada never condones divorce, but he is not opposed to separation in certain circumstances. A woman then can take shelter of her father or an adult son, and is not necessarily expected to remain with a husband who is ill-behaved.
Thank you, Tarika, for bringing those points up. Can you hear me? Because I'm trying to get rid of this echo, and I'm not sure how to do that. Anyway, but yeah, you made a very important point in that having lived through ISKCON of the 80s and seen how mistreated women have been in some situations, the thing that irks me a little sometimes is that when Srila Prabhupada speaks, as you saying, the immaturity, and yeah, and I agree that things are getting better, but we still haven't got to the point yet um, that I feel that we could raise our standards even higher in understanding how these words can impact an immature mind and thus give rise to actions that are not favorable to Krishna consciousness in general. And so I think that that's an important point to understand, that when you look at something and you're looking at it in an immature way, what you say and do after that can impact so many others' lives and actually turn people off Krishna consciousness. So thank you, Prabhu, for making those observations. Lila Kishore, Prabhu, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for us this morning, and for all the points that have been made. And coming from a background of Christianity and Abrahamic religions, I often ask questions in class about the practical instructions for these things, because in other sastras, there are practical instructions about these things. For example, in the Quran, in the chapter 2, the cow, it's actually called the cow. it is stated that husbands and wives are supposed to bring mercy and grace to one another and therefore to the world and have mutual duties. And then there's a whole chapter in the Quran about how to treat women very practically. And it says that a groom has a financial duty. So he gives what's called a bride price. But that's not that he just hands her a bunch of money. He's supposed to take that money and invest it to make sure that she will be secure in life. So that if some point a virtuous wife comes and says, I would like to start this business, or I would like to do this for our household, or our children need these things to grow in grace, it's there and she's safe. And also, so she's not considered, the Hebrew word for widow actually means leftover. So that if in fact her husband should die, she's not just left with nothing, with no resources, with no ability to continue to serve the Lord and to be who she's supposed to be, because she's now poor and dependent on everyone else. And there was a point, and you mentioned that in Vedic culture there was no divorce, right? And there was a point when the Lord Jesus was being questioned by scholars, and they were like, well, how come Moses said we can get divorced? And he said Moses made that as a concession on his own. The original plan of God was that when you marry, you're married, right? And then the men said, then why like we're stuck in those terms. Why would we ever do it? And he went on to say that not everyone is mature enough to live a married life, and that it requires aptitude and grace. And it's not for everyone. And he said that some people never think about getting married, and some people are never asked or accepted. And some people decide to be celibate to serve the Lord, like as sannyasis, you know. But he said that if you are called and chosen by God to marry, then you are capable of growing into the largeness of it, and you should. And there is a chapter, and I know you studied, I know you did, in the Anglican Church, about a good wife. It's Proverbs 31, and it goes on and on about all the things that she'll do, and that her price is worth far among diamonds, and she's trusted without reserve by her husband, that she's never spiteful and treats him generously. But it goes on to all the practical things she does, how she keeps everyone in her household productive and serving the Lord, how she rises early in the morning. So she's doing her rounds early in the morning, but then she's facing all the things and needs of her household. Muslims say that heaven is under the foot of a mother because she's the first guru that a child ever has. Your mother brings you into Krishna consciousness, or she doesn't, by her behavior. And so, implied in all this, which Tarka Babu's talked about, is how can I be a chaste wife and do all that if I'm not protected, if I'm not cared for, if I have to worry about where the next meal for my children is going to come from? So to be a protector, to be a husband, is a huge responsibility. And I often ask these questions not to be controversial, but because I want to know where in the Shastras is that located. Where, not in a way where you have to find it implied, because in the Christian Bible and in the Quran, it's laid out point for point. This is how a husband behaves. It is suggested that Muslims can't even marry until they have read the entire Quran 3 times with one another in the presence of married couples from both of their families. That's a lot of commitment. You're not willing to do that, you're not ready. And so I often ask, where is this? Because I really want to know, where does this exist in ISKCON? There is the Grihastha mission, I know, but how are these young couples who are getting married supported? How are they taught to be husbands and wives? It's not necessarily inherent. And I think that what I've learned about what happened in the 80s clearly shows that. So, how is that being addressed now? How is that being remedied?
Great points, Prabhu. And it's true that I have not seen any list, and that's because I don't know where to look. But all of these points that you're bringing up are excellent points, and I'm sure that some are more advanced, knowledgeable people, maybe Yasudev Prabhu can help share some information. Taraka Prabhu can share something where in the scriptures these things can be found, because other than that, like you said, for me, they're mostly fly. Okay, Prabhus, thank you so very much. We're about to welcome the deities. So let's please do that. Thank you all so much for being a part of this.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya.
Shri Guru Chananda Kamala Bhavati Sarva Shri Guru Dara Chaya Guru Chananda Kamala Krishna Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivastava